everybody, and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. In the inspiration of Passover, which has just ended, we're going to talk about the cycle of life as it's approached by Judaism. We're going to take this week to talk about birth, and next week to talk about death and burial. This week we wanted to talk about the fact that Jewish birth tends to, according to tradition, connect back with what we've spoken about earlier, which is mikvah and nida. Nida is this time that after your period, while you're bleeding, and 7 clean days afterwards, you and your husband cannot touch. Once that period has ended, no pun intended, you dunk in the mikvah, you go back into the waters of life, and then you renew connection and physical contact with your partner. When you're pregnant, because you're actually constantly creating life, or a woman is, so that concept of nida doesn't hold. Throughout the entire 9 months of a woman's pregnancy, she and her husband can be in constant physical contact. However, when the birth process happens and there starts to be this intense creation, when the waters break, and also when a woman can no longer stand up, she actually goes back to nida. So there's a period of time when she and her husband, who's likely her coach, can connect physically, and then at a certain part, they actually are only going to be able to connect verbally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then the baby is born. And what a celebration. And as long as the woman is bleeding, she is again in nida, and she and her husband separate. Now, from what I hear, there's a lot of exhaustion that goes along with it anyway, so it's not such a problem. But it is interesting to note that while creation is happening and while this baby is being formulated, she's not in nida, and the constant contact can happen. And once she actually is bringing that life into the world, at a certain point it transitions back, and so remains the cycle of life. It should be noted, however, that if it's just the woman and her husband who are alone as she goes into labor, active labor where the baby is actually coming, and there's no one else around to support, then of course they can physically touch, because that's when the mitzvah or the commandment of pikuach nefesh, of saving a life, comes into action. Getting that baby into the world alive and thriving trumps all of the commandments altogether, whether that's nida or something else. So if she's in active labor, and otherwise they would be in nida, but he's the only one there, then everything else drops, and just bringing that life into the world is what is the most important. We'll see you next week.